Most people spend their entire lives trying to fix themselves, trying to become more confident, more successful, more lovable, more worthy. But what if the real problem isn't that you are broken? What if the real problem is that you've mistaken a survival story for your identity? If you ever struggled with anxiety, people pleasing, fear of rejection, emotional overwhelm, or feeling that you've never quite enough, this video might help you understand why. By the end of this video, you'll understand the difference between who you are and the story your mind learned to tell about you. And that distinction can actually change everything. Many people carrying childhood trauma don't just experience emotional pain, they become identified with it. The anxiety becomes, this is who I am. The depression becomes, this is who I am. The rejection becomes, this is who I am. Maybe you find yourself overthinking text messages, reading conversations repeatedly, feeling devastated when someone feels distant, needing reassurance but feeling guilty for needing it. Maybe you constantly compare yourself to others, or maybe you're exhausted from trying to prove your worth, trying to be good enough, successful enough, attractive enough, productive enough, spiritual enough. You tell yourself, when I finally achieve enough, then I'll feel okay. But the feeling never fully arrives. Because the problem was never the achievement. The problem was the identity underneath it. And many people are not living from who they are. They are living from conclusions they reached during painful moments. And those conclusions became invisible. They stop feeling like beliefs and they start feeling like reality. So let's talk about how this happens. So when we are young, our brains are trying to make sense of experiences, especially painful experiences. A child doesn't think my caregivers were emotionally unavailable. A child thinks there must be something wrong with me. A child doesn't think my environment was unsafe. A child thinks I need to change to be loved. So the mind creates explanations, and those explanations become identity. Your brain learned, if I'm perfect, maybe I'll be accepted. If I don't need anyone, maybe I won't get hurt. If I stay hyper-vigilant, maybe I stay safe. These were intelligent adaptations. Your nervous system wasn't malfunctioning. It was adapting. The problem is that survival strategies often outlive the environments that created them. The people pleaser becomes an adult who cannot relax. The anxious child becomes an adult who fears abandonment. The emotionally neglected child becomes an adult who feels invisible, not because those things are true, but because the mind learned to organize reality around those beliefs. And here's what many people miss. The brain isn't primarily interested in truth. It's interested in prediction. If your nervous system expects rejection, it begins looking for rejection. If it expects criticism, it begins scanning for criticism. If it expects abandonment, it begins anticipating abandonment. The mind starts creating a world that matches the story. This leads to a powerful question. What if your suffering isn't coming from reality itself? What if it's coming from the story you are using to interpret reality? Think about that. Two people can experience the exact same event. One sees failure, the other sees growth. One sees rejection, the other sees incompatibility. One sees proof they are not enough, the other sees evidence that something wasn't aligned. The event is identical, The meaning is different, and meaning shapes experience. And many people assume they are seeing reality objectively. But we are all seeing reality through layers of memory, through attachment patterns, through emotional conditioning, through expectations, through fear. The mind doesn't simply observe reality, it interprets it. And when we mistake those interpretations for true, suffering deepens. This is why healing is not only changing circumstances, it's also about becoming aware of the lens through which you're seeing them. Okay, now let's make this real. Imagine someone with anxious attachment sends a message. Hours pass, no reply. Immediately, the mind says they are losing interest. I did something wrong. They are pulling away. Nothing actually happened, but the story begins. Now imagine someone with avoidant attachment. They receive a vulnerable message. A part of them feels overwhelmed. Too much closeness, too much pressure. So they withdraw. Not because they don't care, but because closeness activates old fears. Now imagine someone with disorganized attachment. They want connection desperately, but they also fear it. They move towards people, then away from people, towards and then away, feeling trapped between longing and fear. And then imagine someone with a more secure attachment style. The same unanswered text appears. Their mind says they'll probably respond when they are available. Same event, completely different experiences. Why? Because each person is responding not only to the present moment, they are responding to the meaning their nervous system has attached to it. And this happens everywhere in dating, friendships, at work, in families, in social situations. The story becomes the filter, and eventually the filter starts looking like reality. So, what does actually healing looks like? It begins with a simple realization. You are not the story. You are the awareness noticing the story. This doesn't mean that the story is wrong. It doesn't mean your pain isn't real. It means your pain is not your identity. When anxiety appears, notice it. When shame appears, notice it. When self criticism appears, notice it. And instead of saying, "This is who I am," try saying, "This is something I am experiencing." That small shift creates space, and space creates freedom. Healing often begins when we stop arguing with our emotions and start becoming curious about them. Not what's wrong with me, but what happened that taught me to believe this. Not why am I like this, but what was my nervous system trying to protect me from? And compassion towards yourself changes everything because healing is rarely created through self judgment. It's created through understanding. So, the most important thing I want you to remember is this: these stories that help you survive are not necessarily the truth about who you are. Maybe you've spent years believing I'm too much, I'm not enough, I'm hard to love, I have to earn my worth. But those might be conclusions, not true. And there is a profound difference between the two. Beneath every fear, every defense, every coping strategy, every attachment wound, there is something deeper, a self that existed before the story, a self that is still here, a self that has never needed to prove its worth. Most people spend their entire lives trying to improve the story. Few stop long enough to question whether the story is actually who they are. And once you begin asking that question, everything starts to change. Because real healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering what was there before fear told you who you had to be.